The notification arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, right in the middle of my quarterly budget review meeting. Credit inquiry alert from Desert Valley Bank. Amount requested $65,000. I stared at my phone screen, watching my boss's lips move without hearing a single word. The thing was, I hadn't applied for any loan. I hadn't even thought about applying for a loan. My credit was frozen tighter than a drum specifically because identity theft had become so rampant in Phoenix. Someone had just tried to take out a massive loan in my name, and somewhere in the city, they had no clue that I'd received an instant alert. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What they also didn't know was that I'd implemented a comprehensive credit monitoring system 6 months ago after a data breach at my previous employer. Every inquiry, every application, every single attempt to access my credit file triggered an immediate notification. I'd thought I was protecting myself from random hackers or sophisticated crime rings operating out of internet cafes. I never imagined I'd need protection from someone who shared my childhood bedroom, someone who knew my social security number because we'd filled out FAFSA forms together at the kitchen table, someone who'd been my maid of honor just 2 years ago. My sister Brianna had always been the golden child, the one who could charm her way out of parking tickets and into exclusive restaurants without reservations. While I'd chosen the practical path of financial analysis, building spreadsheets and retirement accounts, she'd pursued the Instagram-worthy life of curated perfection. Her house in Tucson always looked like it belonged in a magazine. Her daughter Zoe wore coordinated outfits that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her husband Tyler drove a Range Rover that spent more time in the shop than on the road. I'd admired her confidence, her ability to make life look effortless and beautiful. I'd never stopped to calculate what maintaining that illusion might actually cost. The second notification came through before I could process the first. Application submitted. Loan approved pending verification. My hands went cold. They'd actually approved it. Somewhere in a bank office, paperwork was being processed, documents were being prepared, and someone was about to hand over $65,000 based on forged documents bearing my signature. The violation felt physical, like someone had reached into my chest and stolen something vital. I excused myself from the meeting, barely managing to mumble something about a family emergency. My coworker Heather caught my arm in the hallway, concern written across her face. "Everything okay, Ness?" I opened my mouth to explain, but the words tangled in my throat. How do you articulate the moment you realize your own sister has committed fraud against you? How do you explain that the person you trusted with your Netflix password and your deepest insecurities had just tried to steal your financial identity? I made it to my car before calling the bank. The customer service representative, a woman named Patricia with a voice like warm honey, walked me through the fraud alert process. Yes, this was definitely not me. No, I had not given anyone permission to use my information. Yes, I wanted to press charges. That last question hung in the air longer than it should have. Press charges against whom? Against the abstract concept of identity theft? Or against Brianna Marie Harper, age 29, residing at 4187 Mesquite Lane in Tucson, Arizona? Because by the time Patricia pulled up the application details, there was no mystery about who'd submitted the paperwork. The loan was meant to be deposited into an account I didn't recognize, but the application listed Brianna as a co-signer. More than that, it listed her address, her phone number, her employment information at that boutique marketing firm she was always posting about on social media. She hadn't even tried to hide it. That realization hit me harder than the fraud itself. Brianna had been so desperate, so certain she could pull this off, that she hadn't bothered with elaborate covering of tracks. She'd simply walked into a bank, armed with documents she'd somehow created or stolen, and attempted to take out a loan that would legally bind me to 6 years of payments I'd never agreed to make. The audacity of it, the sheer entitlement required to believe this was acceptable, left me breathless. Patricia's voice softened as she explained the next steps. "We'll freeze the application immediately. You'll need to file a police report. I'd recommend contacting a lawyer. Do you have any idea who might have done this?" I stared out my windshield at the Phoenix skyline, heat waves rising from the asphalt parking lot, and felt my entire understanding of family loyalty crack down the middle. "Yeah," I whispered. "I know exactly who did this." The drive from Phoenix to Tucson normally took about 90 minutes, but I made it in 75, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Marcus had texted me 3 times asking where I was, but I couldn't bring myself to explain over the phone. How do you tell your boyfriend that your sister just committed a federal crime against you? How do you admit that the family you'd always described as close and supportive had just revealed a crack wide enough to swallow your entire sense of security? I'd grown up believing that Harper girls stuck together no matter what. Mom had drilled that into us from the time we were old enough to understand the words. "Your sister is your best friend," she'd say, watching us play in the backyard of our Tucson childhood home. "Blood is thicker than water. You'll always have each other." Brianna and I had matching charm bracelets, coordinated Easter dresses, a secret language made up of inside jokes and shared memories. When I'd gotten my first period at school and bled through my jeans, Brianna had given me her jacket to tie around my waist and told anyone who asked that I'd spilled fruit punch. When she'd wrecked Mom's car at 16, I'd covered for her, claiming I'd been the one driving. We protected each other. That was the foundation our relationship was built on. Except somewhere along the way, the protection had become one-sided. I'd started noticing it in college when Brianna would borrow money for textbooks and never pay it back. Then it was concert tickets she'd promised to Venmo me for but somehow never did. After graduation, when I'd landed my job at Southwestern Financial Group, she'd asked to use my employee discount on a laptop, then returned it 3 weeks later claiming it was defective so she could get a newer model. Small things, I'd told myself. Family helps family. But the small things had been building towards something much larger, and I'd been too busy being the responsible older sister to see the pattern forming. The bank documents were still pulled up on my phone, and at every red light I found myself scrolling through them again. Loan amount $65,000. Purpose debt consolidation and home improvements. My signature, or rather, a surprisingly good forgery of my signature, appeared in 3 separate places. Someone had practiced. Someone had spent time studying how I formed my letters, the specific way I looped the V in Vanessa, the sharp angle of the H in Harper. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was premeditated, calculated fraud. I pulled into a gas station 20 miles outside Tucson, my hands shaking too badly to keep driving. The November desert stretched out around me, all brown earth and distant mountains, the landscape of every childhood road trip and family vacation. I'd always loved this drive, the way the saguaro cacti stood like sentries along the highway, the particular quality of light that turned everything golden in the late afternoon. Now it felt like driving toward an execution, though I wasn't sure if I was the executioner or the condemned. My phone rang. Mom's face filled the screen, the photo from last Christmas where she'd insisted we all wear matching red sweaters. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, she called again. Then a text. "Brianna says you're upset about something. Can we talk?" The rage that flooded through me was so intense I had to put the phone down before I threw it against the dashboard. "Brianna says I'm upset." As if this was some minor misunderstanding, some sisterly squabble over borrowed shoes or forgotten birthdays. As if she hadn't just committed identity theft and then had the audacity to call our mother to manage the fallout. I sat in that gas station parking lot for 20 minutes, watching tumbleweeds blow across the empty lot, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. The lawyer Patricia had recommended, Lawrence Kim, had already emailed me a consultation appointment for tomorrow morning. The police report was filed. The loan application was frozen. All the official channels were in motion. But none of that addressed the real question burning in my chest. Why? Why would Brianna risk everything, our relationship, her freedom, her daughter's stability, for $65,000? What could possibly be worth destroying the trust between sisters? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Brianna directly. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. Just come to the house. Let's talk before you make this worse. Make this worse." I read the text 3 times, each word soaking in like poison. I wasn't the one who'd made anything worse. I wasn't the one who'd forged documents and committed fraud. But somehow, in Brianna's mind, I was the problem for discovering it, for refusing to be a silent victim, for daring to protect myself against her theft. I started the car and pulled back onto the highway. The sun was setting now, painting the desert in shades of amber and rust. Somewhere ahead, in a house filled with expensive furniture and carefully curated family photos, my sister was waiting. I had no idea what I was going to say to her. I had no plan beyond showing up and demanding answers. But as the Tucson city limits sign appeared on the horizon, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Harper girls sticking together no matter what had just come to an end. Brianna's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac in one of those newer Tucson developments where every home looked like it had been designed by the same architect with a preference for beige stucco and decorative rocks instead of actual landscaping. The two-story Mediterranean-style facade had always struck me as trying too hard, much like Brianna herself these days. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. String lights were draped along the front porch even though it wasn't a holiday, and a wooden sign hanging by the door proclaimed this home was filled with love and laughter in that cursive font that populated every home decor store in America. Tyler's Range Rover was in the driveway, which complicated things. I'd hoped to catch Brianna alone, to have this conversation without an audience or interference. Tyler had always rubbed me the wrong way, with his expensive watches and vague job title that seemed to involve a lot of networking lunches but very little actual work. He called himself a consultant, which as far as I could tell meant he connected people for finder fees and talked endlessly about deals that were always just about to close. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, watching the house. Through the front window, I could see movement, shadows passing back and forth. Somewhere inside, my niece Zoe was probably playing with the elaborate dollhouse I'd bought her for her birthday, the one that cost $200 and had tiny working lights. I'd saved for 3 months to afford it, wanting to be the cool aunt who gave the special gifts. The memory of Zoe's face when she'd opened it, pure joy and wonder, made my throat tight. Whatever happened next would affect her too. Children always paid the price for their parents' mistakes. The front door opened before I could decide whether to knock or just leave. Brianna stood there, backlit by the warm glow of her expensive light fixtures, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that probably cost more than my car payment. She looked perfect, as always. Hair in a messy bun that had taken her 20 minutes to achieve, minimal makeup that actually required a dozen products, the carefully constructed image of effortless beauty. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You came," she said, as if there'd been any doubt. As if I wouldn't confront the person who just tried to steal my identity and destroy my credit. "Come inside. We can talk about this like adults. Talk about this like adults." The phrase made me want to scream. Adults didn't forge signatures. Adults didn't commit felonies against their siblings. But I followed her into the house anyway, stepping into the entryway with its decorative mirror and fresh flowers that were definitely from somewhere expensive because Brianna would never buy grocery store bouquets. The inside of the house was exactly as I remembered from my last visit 2 months ago. Everything coordinated, everything placed just so for maximum Instagram potential. The living room featured a sectional sofa that could seat 12 people, throw pillows in various shades of gray and cream, and a coffee table that probably cost more than my entire living room set. Photos covered the walls, professional shots of Brianna, Tyler, and Zoe in matching outfits, candid-looking images that had required multiple takes and a photographer who charged by the hour. Tyler was sprawled on that expensive sofa, beer in hand, watching a football game with the sound turned low. He glanced up when I entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Hey, Vanessa. Good to see you." He didn't stand up, didn't turn off the television, didn't acknowledge that anything was wrong. Either Brianna hadn't told him about the loan application, or he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for. Zoe came running from the kitchen, her 5-year-old energy filling the room like sunshine. "Aunt Nessa." She crashed into my legs with the force of a small freight train, wrapping her arms around my knees. "I missed you. Did you bring me a present?" Not this time, sweetheart, I managed, my voice strained. I'm just here to talk to your mom about grown-up stuff. Boring, Zoe declared, but she released me and skipped back toward the kitchen where I could hear the iPad playing some animated show at high volume. Brianna gestured toward the dining room, away from Tyler and his beer and his deliberate obliviousness. Let's talk in here. She led me to a table that could seat 8, all dark wood and high-backed chairs that looked uncomfortable and probably were. We sat across from each other like opponents in a negotiation, which I supposed we were. Before you say anything, she started, her hands clasped on the table in front of her, you need to understand that I was desperate. Things have been really difficult lately, and I didn't know what else to do. So you committed fraud, I said flatly. You stole my identity and tried to take out a $65,000 loan that I would have been legally responsible for. That was your solution to difficult times. Her face flushed. Don't be so dramatic. I was going to pay you back. You would never have even known about it if your stupid credit monitoring hadn't flagged it. This was supposed to help both of us. Help both of us, I repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air between us. Explain to me how identity theft helps me, Brianna. Walk me through that logic. She leaned back in her chair, frustration flickering across her carefully maintained features. You don't understand what it's like. You've always had everything figured out. Good job, nice apartment, your boring stable life. Some of us are trying to build something bigger, something meaningful. That takes money. It takes investment. Investment, I said. Is that what we're calling fraud now? And what exactly are you investing in? More furniture you don't need? Another vacation you can't afford? Designer clothes for a 5-year-old who'll outgrow them in 6 months? The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but watching her try to justify what she'd done, to paint herself as some kind of misunderstood entrepreneur rather than a criminal, pushed every button I had. This wasn't about investment or building something meaningful. This was about maintaining an illusion, about keeping up appearances no matter who got hurt in the process. Brianna's expression hardened, the mask of sisterly concern sliding away to reveal something colder underneath. You've always been jealous of me. That's what this is really about. You can't stand that I have a beautiful family and a real life while you're stuck in some corporate cubicle counting other people's money. The accusation landed like a slap. In all our years of sisterhood, through every argument and disagreement, Brianna had never weaponized my career choice against me. She'd never suggested that my carefully planned financial stability was somehow inferior to her chaotic pursuit of status. I felt something fundamental shift between us, a cord that had been fraying for years finally snapping clean through. Jealous, I said quietly, dangerously. You think I'm jealous of someone who just committed a felony? Someone so desperate to maintain a fake lifestyle that she'd destroy her own sister's credit and financial future? Tell me, Bree, what part of that am I supposed to envy? Tyler appeared in the doorway, beer replaced with a tumbler of what looked like whiskey. Everything okay in here? His tone suggested he knew perfectly well that nothing was okay, that he'd probably been listening from the living room, waiting to see if he needed to intervene. We're fine, Brianna snapped without looking at him. This is between sisters. Actually, I said, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor, this stopped being between sisters the moment you forged my signature on federal documents. This is between a victim and a criminal now. That's what you are, Brianna. A criminal. Her face went pale. You can't talk to me like that in my own house. Your house that you apparently can't afford, I shot back. What were you planning to do with $65,000, Brianna? Because I looked at the loan application. Debt consolidation and home improvements. How much debt are you drowning in? How bad has it gotten? That's none of your business, she said, but her voice wavered. You made it my business when you used my name, my credit, my social security number. I pulled out my phone, holding it up so she could see the screen filled with bank documents and fraud alerts. Do you have any idea what this could have done to me? I'm trying to buy a condo next year. Marcus and I have been saving, planning, building toward a future. One default on a loan I never authorized would have tanked my credit score for 7 years. 7 years, Brianna. You were willing to sabotage 7 years of my life for what? To keep up with neighbors who probably don't even know your name? Tyler moved further into the room, positioning himself slightly in front of Brianna. I think you should leave, Vanessa. You're upsetting her, and this isn't productive. I'm upsetting her, I repeated, a laugh escaping that sounded unhinged even to my own ears. That's rich. Tell me, Tyler, did you know about this? Were you part of this plan, or is Brianna running her criminal enterprise solo? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I don't know what you're talking about. The loan application, I clarified. The one your wife submitted using my identity. The fraud. The felony. Ring any bells, or should I use smaller words? Brianna stood up, tears streaming down her face now, and I hated that even in the middle of being caught red-handed she could still make herself look like the victim. This is why I didn't come to you for help. I knew you'd react like this. I knew you'd be cold and judgmental and make me feel like garbage instead of trying to understand what we're going through. What you're going through, I corrected. This isn't a we situation. You chose this. You chose to commit fraud instead of having an honest conversation. You chose to steal from me instead of asking for help. You chose to put your lifestyle ahead of your integrity and our relationship. Those were your choices, Brianna. Own them. The sound of little feet on the stairs interrupted us. Zoe appeared, rubbing her eyes, her face concerned in that way children get when they sense adult tension even if they don't understand it. Mommy, why is everyone yelling? Aunt Nessa, are you mad at Mommy? I looked at my niece, this innocent child caught in the crossfire of her mother's terrible decisions, and felt my anger deflate slightly. Not at you, sweetheart. Never at you. Grown-ups just have some complicated things to work out. Brianna scooped Zoe up, holding her like a shield. See what you're doing? You're scaring her. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. I was trying to protect my daughter from financial stress, from having to worry about whether we can afford her school or her activities or her future. I was trying to be a good mother. By committing crimes, I said flatly. By teaching her that it's acceptable to steal from family when things get hard. That's the lesson here, Bree. That's what you're modeling for her. Tyler stepped forward, his expression hardening. I think we've heard enough. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. The irony of that threat hung in the air. Go ahead, I said, pulling out my phone. Save me the trouble. I was planning to call them anyway. I've already filed a fraud report with the bank, but I'm sure the Tucson PD would love to take a statement while I'm here. Make it easier for everyone. Brianna's face crumpled. You wouldn't. I'm your sister. You can't actually go through with pressing charges. Think about what this would do to our family. Think about Mom and Dad. Think about Zoe growing up knowing her mother has a criminal record. I should have felt triumph in that moment, seeing her finally understand the gravity of what she'd done. Instead, I just felt tired. Hollowed out. You should have thought about all of that before you forged my signature. You should have thought about Mom and Dad and Zoe before you committed fraud. Those consequences are yours, not mine. I didn't create this situation. I'm just refusing to be a victim in it. I walked toward the door, my legs feeling disconnected from my body. Behind me, I could hear Brianna sobbing, Tyler murmuring something I couldn't make out, Zoe asking questions no 5-year-old should have to ask. The perfect family in their perfect house, the illusion finally cracking to reveal the rot underneath. My hand was on the doorknob when Brianna called out one last time. If you do this, we're done. You'll never see Zoe again. You'll lose your entire family over $65,000. Is that really worth it to you? I turned back to look at her, this woman who'd once been my best friend, my partner in childhood adventures, my sister. The question is whether I'm worth $65,000 to you. And apparently, I'm not. That tells me everything I need to know about what our relationship actually means. The meeting with Lawrence Kim happened in a glass-walled office in downtown Phoenix that overlooked the city sprawl. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. He listened without interrupting as I walked him through everything, the alert, the documents, the confrontation at Brianna's house, all of it. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You have an airtight case for identity theft and fraud. The documentation is solid, the bank has cooperated fully, and your sister essentially admitted to the crime in front of witnesses. If you press charges, she'll face federal prosecution. That means potential prison time, hefty fines, and a permanent criminal record." "I know," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "But that's not really why you're here, is it?" Lawrence's expression softened. "You're here because you need someone to tell you what the right choice is. You want permission to either pursue this or let it go. Am I close?" The accuracy of his assessment made my throat tight. I nodded. "Here's what I can tell you," he continued. "Legally, you have every right to prosecute. Morally, that's between you and your conscience. But practically speaking, you need to consider what outcome you actually want. Do you want justice, revenge, protection, or reconciliation? Because you probably can't have all four." The days that followed were the longest of my life. Marcus held me while I cried, made me tea I didn't drink, and listened to me process the same circular thoughts over and over. My best friend Heather advocated loudly for prosecution, insisting that Brianna needed to face consequences. Mom called 17 times, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails begging me to reconsider, to think about the family, to remember that Harper girls forgive each other. Dad sent a single text that said only, "Whatever you decide, I support you," which somehow meant more than all of Mom's pleas combined. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept pulling up photos on my phone from our childhood, looking for the moment when things had shifted, when Brianna had transformed from my partner into someone capable of betraying me so completely. There was the two of us at Halloween, dressed as matching witches. Christmas morning, surrounded by wrapping paper and laughter. Her wedding day, where I'd stood beside her and promised to always be there. Every image felt like evidence in a trial I was conducting against my own memories. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I'd gone to visit Dad alone, needing his quiet steadiness without Mom's emotional manipulation. We sat in his workshop, the smell of sawdust and motor oil familiar and comforting, while he sanded a rocking chair he was building for Zoe's upcoming birthday. "Your mother thinks I should convince you to drop the charges," he said finally, not looking up from his work. "She thinks I should tell you that family forgives, that this will blow over, that we all make mistakes. But you're not going to say that," I guessed. "No." He set down the sandpaper and met my eyes. "I'm going to tell you that your sister has been spiraling for 2 years. The spending, the desperation to keep up appearances, the way she manipulates your mother into covering for her. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. It's just the first time she's gotten caught." The words hit me like cold water. "What do you mean, not the first time?" Dad sighed heavily. "She forged your mother's signature on a credit card application last year. Ran up $15,000 in debt before your mom found out. Carol paid it off to avoid scandal. Before that, she borrowed money from her in-laws and never paid it back. There'd been bounced checks, maxed out cards, a car repossession they managed to hide. Your sister isn't just bad with money, Vanessa. She's got a problem. Maybe addiction to spending, maybe something deeper. But it's a problem, and nobody's made her face it because we've all been too busy protecting her from consequences." The revelation reframed everything. This wasn't an isolated incident, a moment of desperation from an otherwise responsible person. This was a pattern, and I was just the latest victim in a long line of people Brianna had used and discarded in her pursuit of an unsustainable lifestyle. "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were me?" Dad picked up his sandpaper again, considering. "I'd ask myself what outcome gives everyone the best chance at actually getting better. Prosecution might feel righteous, but it won't fix what's broken in your sister. Letting it go completely enables the pattern to continue. Maybe there's a third option. Something that protects you but also forces her to get help. That conversation led me back to Lawrence Kim's office with a proposal. Instead of criminal charges, I wanted a legally binding agreement. Brianna would enter financial counseling and therapy. She'd pay restitution for the attempted fraud, even if it took years. She'd have no access to my personal information ever again, all documented and notarized. If she violated any terms, I'd pursue prosecution with no hesitation. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it wasn't destruction either. It was a boundary with teeth. Brianna signed the agreement 3 weeks later in Lawrence's office, her hands shaking, makeup unable to hide the exhaustion in her face. Tyler sat beside her, noticeably absent his usual bravado. Mom cried throughout the entire process. Dad stood behind me, solid and unwavering. The months that followed weren't easy. Brianna and I didn't speak directly for almost half a year. When we finally did, it was brief and stilted, two strangers trying to remember how to be sisters. But slowly, incrementally, something started to shift. The therapy was working. She'd gotten a real job, part-time at first, then full-time. The house went on the market, and they moved to a smaller place they could actually afford. Zoe seemed happier somehow, less anxious, no longer carrying the weight of her parents' financial stress. I saw them at Dad's birthday dinner 10 months after the loan incident. Brianna looked different, softer somehow, less polished but more genuine. She caught my eye across the table and mouthed the words "I'm sorry." I nodded, not quite ready to say I forgive you, but no longer consumed by anger either. After dinner, she asked if we could talk outside. We stood in Dad's backyard under the desert stars, the November air cool against our skin. "I don't expect you to trust me again," she said quietly. "I don't even expect you to like me. But I want you to know that what you did, holding me accountable, it saved my life. Maybe Zoe's too." I was drowning, and I couldn't admit it because admitting it meant facing how badly I'd failed at the life I'd tried to create. "You didn't fail," I told her. "You just picked the wrong measuring stick." She laughed, a real laugh, not the performative one she used to deploy at parties. "Yeah. That's what my therapist says too. Turns out Instagram isn't a life plan." We didn't hug. We didn't make grand promises about rebuilding our relationship. But we stood there together, two sisters who'd survived a betrayal that should have destroyed us, and found a fragile hope that maybe, eventually, we'd find our way back to something that resembled family. Marcus proposed 2 months later, and I said yes without hesitation. When we told my parents, Mom cried happy tears and immediately started planning. Brianna sent a text that said simply, "Congratulations. He's lucky to have you." It wasn't much, but it was honest, and honesty was the only currency I valued anymore. The wedding was small, just close friends and immediate family. Brianna came with Tyler and Zoe, sitting near the back, not causing drama or making demands. During the reception, Zoe ran up to me in my white dress and threw her arms around my waist. "You look like a princess, Aunt Nessa. A real one, not a pretend one." I glanced at Brianna across the room and saw her watching us, tears streaming down her face. She nodded once, an acknowledgement of all we'd lost and all we were slowly rebuilding. It would never be what it was before. The innocence of our childhood bond was gone forever, burned away by betrayal and hard truths. But maybe what we were building now, founded on honesty instead of obligation, accountability instead of enabling, was stronger for having been broken and repaired. As Marcus and I drove away from the reception toward our honeymoon and our future, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the wound never happened. It's about choosing not to let the wound define you. Brianna had tried to steal my identity, but in fighting back, in refusing to be a victim, I'd actually discovered who I really was. Someone strong enough to hold boundaries. Brave enough to demand better. Wise enough to know that love without accountability isn't love at all, it's just enabling dressed up in sentiment. The alert that arrived at 2:47 on that Wednesday afternoon hadn't just saved my credit. It had saved me from a lifetime of being used by someone who mistook my loyalty for weakness. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is refuse to participate in their self-destruction, even when they hate you for it, especially when they hate you for it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.